Welcome to the Making Sense of Faith podcast. My name is Adam Hamilton. I'm the senior pastor at the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection in the Kansas City area, and I'm the host of this podcast, and I want to thank you for joining me. This podcast is for people who have questions about faith, people who aren't certain but maybe open to learning more about faith, as well as for people, longtime Christians, people who are deeply into their faith, to help us think about the connection between faith and everyday life. And today I want to share with you just a little bit about the power of church. So there's a lot of people today who have said, I'm interested in Jesus. I think about the Doobie Brothers, Jesus is just all right with me. I think they're the ones who sang that song. And I think there's a lot of people out there who like Jesus. There's a lot of people out there who believe in God. There's a lot of people out there who say, I'm spiritual but not religious. And a whole lot of people have said, but I don't really need church. I don't really need organized religion. And I understand that. There's a lot of bad things that have happened in the name of organized religion. There are places where people have felt hurt by churches. I don't think that's the norm, but when those things happen, they certainly give us one more reason why, I don't know that I want to be a part of that. And there are churches out there that I would say, if that was the only church that existed, I wouldn't want to be a part of that either. But I want to just lift up some of the good reasons why Jesus started a church. So that's one of the things that we sometimes forget, is that the church was Jesus' idea. He started the church. He pulled together first 12 disciples, then he had 72 people who were following him, and there was 120 on the day of Pentecost, and then later on there were 3,000. And so he's starting he's not just passing on a message. He's actually inviting people into a community. And which of us don't need community today? And the reality is community is absolutely essential, and it's hard to find it. And in this digital age, our communities sometimes are people who are on our Facebook page or on, X or Instagram, and all that's great. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to look to see you posted something and people put likes on there. They give you the heart emoji or whatever. But that's just not the same as having deep, intimate friendships or relationships with people. And so we need community. And sometimes that community isn't even deep, intense relationships. Sometimes it's just people who are working together with a common goal or have a shared set of values in life. And it's interesting, across America, 36% of Americans participate regularly in religious services. That is not like Christmas and Easter. These are people who are regularly going to church, and 36%. And there's obviously something like 70% of all Americans claim to be Christians. But many of them, again, not actively involved in a faith community. So we spent some time over the last couple of months at Resurrection doing research into the benefit of going to church, because I think if Christians in the church don't actually advocate for what the benefits are, nobody's going to hear that. And so again, we kind of move into this, well, I believe these things, but I don't really I'm not a part of a faith community. So I just thought I'd share a few of these things with you. You may be somebody who says, look, I'm not interested in an organized religion. I'm not interested in a faith community. And I get that. I totally understand. But I want to just share some reasons why, from secular sources. These are not secular researchers. These are not, seminary professors saying this, why you might want to consider being a part of a faith community. And when I say faith community, these statistics are true whether you're a part of a Jewish community or a Hindu community or a Muslim community. It just happens to be that most of the people who are part of faith communities in America that are surveyed are part of Christian communities, because Christianity is the largest religion by far in America. So here's just a little bit of data that I'd share with you. 2024 survey from the American Psychiatric Association reported that 6 in 10 Americans agreed that their faith or spirituality is an important factor in supporting their mental wellness. So that doesn't necessarily say going to church, but later on we're going to find that when you're involved in church, you're actively involved in a faith community, that leads to a deeper spirituality or a stronger spirituality, which in turn supports mental wellness. Researchers today and sociologists who are concerned about what's going to happen in mental health in America when an increasing number of people, at least has been the case over the last few years, are no longer actively involved in church. Now, that's starting to change. So we found that's kind of bottomed out, and we're beginning to see a resurgence of church attendance today, but still just beginning to see that. We find that people who are actively involved in faith communities tend to live longer. Multiple studies show that. Part of this is a result of having social community or social capital. You've got friends who are supporting you and caring for you, people who are carrying you through tough times. We call them stretcher bearers here. And often these are people in small groups with you, Bible studies, Sunday school classes, but sometimes they're the people who sit by you in church. So I have to tell you, just before I came in to film this episode, I stopped in to see a small group of women in our congregation, and they were meeting together today because one of their members had lost her son to suicide a year ago. And so they were meeting to pray with her, to just sit with her and talk and connect and have coffee. And then they were going outside to the niche where his ashes are inurned to stop and remember him there together. And it was beautiful to see this group of women coming together and caring for each other. There was a couple of school teachers, a wide array. She's an executive assistant for somebody, a wide array of backgrounds. And there were two of the women in the group who had each lost a child. So she'd lost her son a year ago, and another woman in the group had lost her son, I think it's 5 months ago now, in a motorcycle accident. And the way that they have cared for each other and carried each other and supported each other and prayed for each other. And that's a microcosm of the church. That is what church looks like. It's people gathered together to care for one another, to grow in their faith, to support one another. And we call them stretcher bearers around here because of the story in the Gospels where there was a paralytic and 4 of his friends come along and they carry him on a stretcher to Jesus. They can't get to Jesus because the house is jam-packed with people, so they take him up to the rooftop and they pull off the thatch roof and they lower him on ropes before Jesus on his stretcher. And Jesus looks up to the people who had opened the roof up, his friends, and because of their faith, the Gospel tells us, Jesus healed the man. These people were stretcher bearers. They were carrying their friend before the Lord. And that's part of how we look at what it means to be the church. We're meant to be stretcher bearers, carrying one another. I noted that, here's just some other statistics. 58% of people are actively religious. That is, they're involved in a faith community, are also involved in volunteering at some other volunteer organization, charity groups outside in the community. So a large source of the volunteers in our communities are coming from faith groups, faith communities who are sending churches and synagogues, who in turn are sending their people out, mobilizing their people and inspiring them to go out and serve in the community and the world, which is why researchers have also raised the alarm actually. If attendance at church continues to decline and faith communities continues to decline, where are the volunteers going to come from? It's not that atheists and agnostics and non-religious people never volunteer. They just don't volunteer at the levels that people who are actively involved in a faith community volunteer. So again, 58% of those who are involved in a church are also volunteering outside the walls of the church. So I was thinking about, as an example of that, or multiple examples, as I was walking back to the studio to record this podcast, I walked past another group. So there was a classroom here in the church, and it was filled with women. And they're a women's Bible study that meet every week. But today they were meeting to prepare gift packages for Halloween for the teachers at Quindaro Elementary School. Quindaro is in one of the lower income communities in Kansas City. We have a partner relationship there. We support the teachers. We've rehabbed their playground. We have tutors who are reading in the school. And so many partnerships that we have there to support what they're doing and the important work they're doing with at-risk kids. But I love the fact that this women's Bible study was involved, and they were, not only are they involved there, but they were involved in meeting together, having fun, packing these gift packs to care for the teachers in that school. I mean, it was just a joy to see that. I think about the role that, so I'll mention a few other of these stats, and then I want to share with you just some personal comments. But So there was several longitudinal studies that indicated that attending, and I'm quoting now, attending religious services at least weekly is associated with a 25 to 35% reduced mortality over 10 to 15 years. That came out of Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. Regular service attendance were maintained over the life of the course. The lower mortality rates would translate into approximately 7 additional years of life. Think about that. You want to live longer? We're going to take vitamins. We're going to work out. We're going to exercise. But the thing that has the greatest, or could have the greatest impact in your life on longevity, is actually being involved in a faith community on a regular basis. Again, here's another study. Religious service attendance is also longitudinally associated with better mental health. Approximately 20 to 30% lower rates in the incidence of depression were found, and 3 to 6-fold lower rates of suicide among people who were regularly involved in their faith community, regularly worshiping together, involved in small groups, all of these kind of things. 80% of people agreed that people who are actively involved in faith communities agreed that churches and other religious organizations bring people together and strengthen community bonds. So that's their experience in a faith community. 78% of those involved in a faith community agreed that they play an important role in helping the poor and the needy. 64% agree that they protect and strengthen morality in society. Now, you would say, well, of course, those are church people who are saying that. But what they're saying is, this is the impact it's having on me. I think that's what they're saying. Another study, over half of all the participants in a faith community indicate 3 positive experiences that increase their participation in that space. A feeling of community and belonging, 55% said that. 53% said shared spiritual beliefs and faith. And finally, meaning and purpose, 51%. And what that was saying is they found community. They found a sense of meaning and belonging by virtue of being a part of a faith community. All right. So I'm going to stop with the stats. I've got page after page of them here. And I thought I might just mention my own experience of being in a faith community. So I started attending church when I was 14. I was an atheist. When somebody invited me to church, I went. They had cute girls at church. I decided I would go. I started going, and I started, for the first time, reading the Bible. I was encouraged to read the Bible. I started reading the Bible, started finding faith. I found Christ. I found faith by going to church. I not only found that, but I found a community of people who encouraged me and cared for me when life was really hard as a teenager. My mom and dad had gotten divorced a couple of years before. My mom and stepdad got divorced, remarried, and divorced again. My stepdad was an alcoholic. Life was just hard as a teenager. But I had this faith community, the Sunday school teachers, my youth group leaders, my friends in youth group, my pastor who cared for me and helped me. It was there as a teenager that I met my future wife, that I met LaVon. And we became best friends in youth group. Long before we started dating, we became best friends and close companions. And it was out of that friendship that I met my wife. And we share a set of, a common faith that's reinforced by being involved in church. It was there that I felt called to ministry. And so thank God for a church where the pastor and several other people said, we think you have gifts to be a pastor. And God spoke to me through them. And that ended up shaping my life profoundly and the direction of my life going forward. I think about over the years, beyond that, the role that the church has played in helping me and helping shape my values. So, you might listen to podcasts, you can listen to a whole lot of things, but there's something about being in a faith community where every week they're taking the scriptures and saying, what do these scriptures have to say to us today? Doing a bit of what I'm trying to do on this podcast, asking, where does faith meet life? And I found it shaped my values. It shaped how I saw the world. It shaped how I treated people. It wasn't that I might not have had some of those same values without being involved in a church. It's just that hearing the message each week reinforced it and strengthened my resolve to live in certain ways and to avoid living in other ways. I came from a family of alcoholics, and so, in that way, I think it led me, it sort of protected me from maybe taking steps I might otherwise have taken. I think about my resources and what I do with money and how I think about money. And at one point, I think, apart from my faith, I might have looked at money as primarily something that I wanted to have as much as I could, both for my own security as well as for acquisition of lots of things, and that maybe I would have believed that my life consisted in the abundance of my possessions. But it was Jesus who said, your life does not consist in the abundance of your possessions. I might not have ever known that were it not for the fact that I went to church and heard that passage. And now I share that passage, that verse, every year with the congregation here. The fact that I was taught about stewardship, taught about being a steward of the resources of God and looking at everything I had as a gift and looking at all of life as a gift. I mean, all of these are ways in which being a part of a faith community, being a part of a church has shaped my life for good. And so, part of what I'd say is, and I had somebody say this the other day, I've heard this several times. Somebody just recently, though, said the same thing. They said, seeing the way some Christians act, I think I don't want to be that, and I don't want to be associated with that. I'm not going to call myself a Christian anymore. I'm a follower of Jesus, but not a Christian. And my comment to this person was, listen, there are lots of Christians out there who get it wrong. We all do sometimes. And there are Christians who do things or say things that are just, that are painful sometimes. But that doesn't reflect all of Christians or Christianity. We all make mistakes sometimes, but the people who are routinely giving Christianity a bad name, if you allow them to claim the title Christian and you're not willing to use it, then the only Christians people will know are Christians like that. And so I shared with this person, you've got to continue to let people know you're a Christian. You've got to be willing to let people see a different kind of Christian than the one that they might see in this person who's alienating people from the faith. And I think that's true of churches. There are a lot of churches in America, I don't know, 300,000 or 400,000 churches, maybe more. And there are some that are unhealthy and where people are hurt. But the vast majority of those churches are communities doing the best they can to try to follow Jesus, to help people grow in their faith, to encourage and foster a faith that transforms the world in positive ways. And so I guess I'd say to you, if you're not actively involved in a church, I'd love to encourage you to find a church family. Now, you're welcome to join us at Resurrection online. If you live outside the Kansas City area, join us online. We're at cor.org/worship, and just check it out, experience it, and not just listening to the sermons, but actually the entire worship experience, to be able to sing, to pray. You can join us for Eucharist, for Holy Communion on Communion Sundays. But to get involved in that way, and online, people can get involved in small groups, Bible studies online, where they're meeting together in Zoom calls. And so that's one possibility for you. Or find a church in your community, a faith community where you can get involved and where you can find your own faith growing, and where you can participate with people right in your city or in your neighborhood or in your community as they seek to grow together in faith. I just want to make the case, we live in a world where it's easy to say, well, we don't really need this anymore. And we're, especially in the digital world, feeling like, well, maybe podcasts will take the place of church. But there's something about being together. And I think that's what Jesus had in mind. The word ekklesia is the Greek word used for church, or translated as church in the New Testament. It means to be called out and called together. It signifies community. The word church itself, Kirch, comes from it comes from the German Kirch, but comes from a Latin word kuriakon. It means belonging to the Lord. And so there's this idea that there's a community that belongs to Jesus, and He is the one who's shaping and forming it. And that community has the power to change your life if you get plugged in and involved. So I just want to encourage you, get plugged into a church, a faith community in your neighborhood, in your community, or join us online at Church of the Resurrection. And I think you're going to find that involvement will change your life for good. So hope you'll join me next week for our next episode of Making Sense of Faith. And until then, I hope you might consider, if you're not already, getting plugged into a church. And if you are a member of a church, but you hardly ever attend, not much benefit if you're hardly ever attending. I want to encourage you to say, you know what, we need to be involved in church. It will help us, and we have a chance to help other people. And you're going to find your life positively impacted by being a part of a faith community, by being a part of a church. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Making Sense of Faith with Adam Hamilton. Do you know someone wrestling with life's biggest questions? Share this episode with them. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell to catch future episodes and videos there. We'll see you on the next episode of Making Sense of Faith.